Yeah, that's what we've been waiting for. Just for one more person. Let's get started. Right, good afternoon, everybody. And I'm Tracy Miranda, and together with Jonah, we're going to tag team and walk you through scripting with Python. Anyone went to Christian's talk this morning on scripting? Okay. So similar idea, but much more focused on the Python side of things. And it's a relatively new project at Eclipse, so we're going to talk a bit about, we'll start off talking about the background and how it kind of fits in with the whole Eclipse ecosystem. And then we'll go straight into demos and just give you lots and lots of different ideas of things you can do with the scripting. And then we'll talk a bit about where we see this going, the vision and the roadmap for that, and then happy to take any questions you might have. Okay, so if we start with a bit of background on the project. So the Eclipse Advanced Scripting Environment was a general framework that Christian had put together. And the idea was that you could plug in whatever scripting language you wanted to have. You could, in the spirit of Eclipse, extend it with whatever language you wanted. And originally, it was designed with JavaScript in mind. So the very first implementations were with JavaScript. And we started using the Jython version of it because Jython, I work a lot with the science working group, and a lot of the scientists and researchers use Jython and Python. So we took Jython and we had to play with it to see what it could do. I wrote an article on opensource.com, which is how to use Python to hack your Eclipse IDE. That was all using Jython, so it sort of walks you through how you would set it up and all these different ideas about how to use it. But one of the limitations of Jython was that it doesn't give you access to the libraries that Python has, like numpy and scipy and anything that uses C extensions. So while it was a good solution, it had its limits. And so we said, well, can we use Python proper? But the one difference with Python, and you can see it's there in orange compared to everything else in purple, is that everything in purple, these are all languages that run in the JVM. But Python, or specifically CPython, doesn't run in the JVM. So it was a particular challenge to say, well, how can we use this framework and extend it with a language that will run in a separate process, deal with all the different concepts of memory management, thread management between Java and Python. So this basically evolved over a number of conferences where first we talked about integrating Python and Java, then we met Christian and he talked about scripting, and eventually we've gotten to this point. Okay, just very quickly, Python is heavily used in the science world. It's heavily used in the embedded world. For example, you can extend GDB with Python. And the main thing is it just has lots and lots of fast, powerful libraries. You can use it in web, you can use it for data scraping, so very, very flexible and growing language. And there's a specific technology out there called Py4j. So we looked at a number of different options for ways you could integrate it in things like JEP and Jonah, which are different frameworks that connect Java and Python. Each one of those had certain limitations, and Py4j sort of came out as the winner. It's a bridge between Java and Python, and it allows Python to Java access. One of the good things we look for with projects is how much of a community is supporting it. And they were very responsive, and it's also being used as part of Apache Spark by PySpark, so we know there's a lot of community momentum. And the developer Bartholomew Dagenet does some really great work on that. And so we got involved, contributing things, writing a new threading model that would very specifically mean you could use it in Eclipse, and you could deal with SWT threading issues. And you could recursively call Python and then call back to Java, then have, you could just mix and match whichever way you want. And yeah, the results are pretty exciting. Just briefly, EASE, on the EASE side, it has this very modular approach to things. So it groups things in very familiar packages. So we've got the UI, resources, and platform. And this gives a nice sort of extensible mechanism which we can use together with the Python and Java bridge. OK, so actually, I'll go into this a bit. So one of the main aims, who's written a plugin for Eclipse? Yeah, OK, quite a few of you. So you'll recognize this flow then of how it goes is you have to write some Java code, and it can only be Java. You write it in a plugin with a bit of XML. Then to test it, you launch up a separate Eclipse runtime. Once you're happy with your plugin, you figure out how to build and deploy it. And then you install it in Eclipse. Maybe you've gone through Maven and Tycho. Maybe you've just used the IDE. And finally, you have your new functionality. And it's actually quite a long-winded process. So with the scripting, we're looking at dramatically simplifying that. So you write in language of your choice. In this case, we're looking at Python. It instantly modifies your runtime Eclipse environment. So you can see, you can have that fast feedback. And you just point EASE at the script, and you're done, nothing to install. And this flow just kind of opens up Eclipse to a whole new world of developers in the science world. We're looking at researchers and scientists who perhaps don't know Java, but it suddenly makes Eclipse much more accessible to them to extend and use in the way other people have been doing. OK, so when we look at different ways you can be productive with EASE, we've sort of divided them into 4 categories. So one is maybe from a developer standpoint, be much more productive. The second is how could you extend Eclipse quickly. The third is how can you leverage all the existing Python libraries that are there. And the fourth is just this whole idea of collaboration. How do you then use your scripts to share with other people and share features you're developing? So we'll look at those 4 now in examples. There's a GitHub URL there, so all the example scripts are there if people want to take them, try them, modify them. And we'll go into the demo now. OK, so we start off with, we have a Python script shell. So if you have EASE installed and then you install the Python to Java, you see you have all your choice of your normal scripting languages, but we're specifically on the Python Py4j one. And so in that, you can run standard Python commands. If I just do that, if you do a print hello world, the output comes into this console, and then you can, this is standard Python now, and you can use any libraries that are on your path. So you can use the sys one, for instance, and take advantage of everything, all the libraries that you have with Python.
Python 3 fully.
Yeah, you can use whichever one you like. OK, so you've got the console where you can run things, and that's got history in there. And then the next thing, so that's just Python. So now we get into the EASE bit, which involves the modules. So you've got your modules that are available there. And let's say we'll take the UI one. So you load your module, and then just look at my cheat sheet here. So then you can start using things in there, like in this case, I'll say show info dialog, hello ECE. And now all of a sudden we're interacting with Eclipse APIs, and we're controlling the GUI from Python. OK, so that's the console. And now I'll show you some scripts and how you can run scripts. So if you have a script, and in this case, I have some utilities. Okay, I've got this script that's going to create me 5 Java projects. So there's some support code there because we don't have any Java module at the moment. But basically, we're going to create a Java project from the set here. So 5 projects there. We're going to create a package. And then we're going to create a class in each one of those. So to run the scripts, you can right-click and do Run As. So I'll get my 5 scripts created there. And what's nice about EASE is it lets you, so you could take this functionality and you could put it straight in a button that extends the user interface. So I'm just going to copy. So EASE has these magic headers. If you put that in there, there's 2 steps you have to do. First, you have these comments which say you want to extend the user interface. And then the second thing you have to make sure is that the scripting framework knows about that script. So you set up a script location, which in this case, if I point to my utilities, it instantly gives me a button there that says create 5 projects. And if I want to change that, it will automatically update it. So it says create your 5 Java projects. And likewise, I've got a delete version. So if I just add a header to that as well. So I have a nice delete button. And you can see the delete script is pretty simple. So yeah, so now I've got my buttons up there. I can happily just tie the scripts to the functionality, and then just instantly I've got some functionality that might help me with testing. And the magic key headers are really quite nice because you can do things like you just change them and it updates, and it's kind of like magic. Now I've got my delete 5 projects there, so it's very, very dynamic. Okay, so let's look at some more automate examples. So I've got this script, and the idea was it's going to go through all my projects and add a readme.md file. Let's say I want to clean up and put that into Git. So this just shows you how you'd go through all the projects, check if there was already an existing file, but if it didn't exist, then you would create one. And specifically, again, we're using some Eclipse APIs. We're going to check the nature. If it's a type of Java project, just paste in that it's a Java project. And if it's a type of Python project, just paste in it's a Python project. So if we run that script, okay, so first I'm going to create my 5 test projects. So they'll sit around there. And then you can also run the scripts from the Script Explorer. And so if I press go on that, so now I've got my README showing up there, and the Java projects have Java projects, and I've got some my Python projects, we'll say Python project. And it's quite nice if you think of things like updating copyrights or things like that, you just have a script to do it. Yeah. Other automating tasks are, if you talk about code cleanup, we had a nice little script we wrote that it would go through all the code and find anyone who had just done a print stack trace instead of dealing properly with an exception. And then we wanted to use the Eclipse markers to create a marker to say, okay, we're going to have a special sprint to tidy up all that untidy code. So if I run the marker script, you can go see it's going to find all my print stack traces in my generated Java files I have there. And again, if I just, if I had a whole load of them again and I just ran that, can I rerun that through here? It will just pick them all up and I'll have all my markers there, so we can go through them for doing some code cleanup. Okay, so that's the automate examples. Now if we switch back to extending the UI, we've already seen how you can do buttons quite easily. So if we just look at a bit more at the magic. This one is extending a pop-up menu. So we have a new pop-up menu we're going to call Explore from here. We're going to say, please enable my menu item anytime I select a resource. And then there's a bit of a tooltip as well. And this shows you how you would deal with selections in Eclipse. So it goes through and it works out whether it's a structured selection, a resource, a file, or a container. And eventually, whether it's something that you can run explorer.exe just to launch any sort of third-party tool you want to integrate, which in this case is Explorer. So again, to make that work, you need to make sure your script location knows about that. So I'll add that in. Extend solutions. OK. And you'll see that you get an Explore from here showing up on the right kinds of resources. And just to make sure it's live, we'll change the name, and then it changes the name. So, and if I click on that, I get explorer.exe opened up. OK, and then the final extend solution is trying to emulate this idea of macros. So in this case, let's say I wanted a macro that was going to replace the private keyword with the public keyword. And on your watch. Great. OK, so in this case, we're going to do it on a selection in a text editor. And again, if I have my script explorer, you could set that up with all your macros. In this case, it's got all my files, but I've got the replace private with public there. So if I show you in the sample Java file, I have a whole set of private methods. So I could just right-click that now and run. The menu's getting really long now. So I think, was that my one? I've got two scripts in there. So that will run and replace that. In this case, it's just doing a simple text selection replacement. You could do it in a way that used the underlying indexer, the refactoring support, to do a full, perhaps a bit of a refactor. But yeah, so in this way, you could provide lots of macros and just have them available for people who want to extend the editor in simple ways. OK, so for integrated solutions, I'll hand over to Jonah. You can take over.
OK, so we have some more examples to go through, more things that we can do. So integrate. So we mentioned before, one of the key reasons, one of the key drivers to have CPython instead of Jython is to integrate with other tools. And so I'll show you a very simple example on integrating with CPython. So this might be something that anyone's used matplotlib might be familiar with. They're using matplotlib, numpy, just taking the sign of a very simple array here and then plotting it. So if I run this as a standard Python run, so this is using PyDev, it will run this, and momentarily it'll pop up a figure, and it's sorry, and that's matplotlib. So that has nothing to do with Eclipse. But we can do the same script using numpy, but now using the charting module within that's provided by EASE, which uses SWT chart. And we'll do the same plotting. So now we're taking the power of numpy and we're interacting with Eclipse. So if we run that as an EASE script, we get our chart as a view in Eclipse. So there's NumPy and Eclipse working well together. Now, we can stretch ourselves a little bit farther here. Not necessarily a recommended design approach, but we're kind of trying to prove a point. Here is a program that's going to run, it's part of Eclipse, but it's going to create a whole GUI, including all the listeners in Python. So if you run that as an EASE script, we end up with a simple GUI. It's one of the examples from SWT, but all this is written in Python using SWT. So we can add new data, we can remove data. And you can see here, we have our data selection listener, which is added to the SWT button there, and the remove listener on there. And we can get off the selections from, where is it? On the remove, we can get the list viewers selections back from SWT in Java and process them back in Python. But this is the integrate section, so that doesn't really integrate anything. So the next example takes that and uses the CSV module to load this open data we got from London. They call it a CSV, but it's a file with a bunch of stuff about buses in London. So we launch that example. It's going to load that file up. And so now we're Eclipse, SWT, and CPython CSV files all loaded together. So it's like, actually, we'll get rid of these ones. So
the Python running the Python process, and the SWT stuff is obviously running on the
yeah. So Py4j is controlling it, but the SWT widgets are running in the Eclipse process. So this is a key demonstration of what was mentioned before as the pinned thread model. So anyone who's been SWT programming knows you have to do all your UI programming in the main thread. And this is showing how the Python, which is a separate process, is actually effectively running in the main thread in the Java space. So. Okay, so that was our integration ones. Let's go to our share ones. Oomph is quite a popular project, and let's call this Oomph Lite. So here's a simple little script. It's just what it's going to do is it's going to toggle the line numbers by just setting the preference. So it's going to read the existing preference of the editor's line number ruler, and then it's going to write that preference to the inverse. So if I run that, you should see the line numbers disappeared. Run it again, the line numbers come back. So that's getting preferences. Now, we can go a bit farther than that. When I was trying to figure out what preferences are doing what and change something in the UI, this is one way to see all the stuff. So what we're doing here is we're going through and getting all of the preferences from Eclipse, storing them in memory, and then later when we run the script again, it's going to see if we ran it previously and do a diff on all the preferences and print the results out. So let's load up the initial ones. So it says, OK, make some changes to your properties and run again to see the differences. So let's toggle our line numbers. And then if we run our getting all the preferences again, it's going to show us, well, that's the name of the preference that was changed. And this can go off and get changes in project preferences because it's getting, I happen to have done this unscoped. So I think if I do that one, I can see it. Oops. So you see I've gone into the preferences and it's noticed some bundle defaults got loaded up for the first time. And over here, this project, I've changed the line separator, something random like that. But it's showing the project scope, the default scope. The script is getting all the scopes out quite easily and quickly. And it's a few lines of code to do it. The advantage of using Python, frankly. All right. So that leads to, OK, well, let's set up some preferences. Now, in one of Vogella's tutorials, he has, these are all the sets of preferences that you should change the defaults from Eclipse. So here's changing all my preferences from the defaults in Eclipse. And so you can run that up and set yourself up. And it says, oh, well, we didn't need to change any of those things, because I'd probably run this script before. But we changed the last one, line and rule. We turned it back on because we've been toggling it a lot. All right. So that was share. Now, this last one actually... Oh, that's in the command line, is it? Oh, yes. Thank you. All right, so one other example. Take an example of, we've seen this a few times. People want to know what projects are in the workspace, but want to be able to do it headlessly. Some guys in Gradle were trying to figure out how to do this. And the metadata within Eclipse is a binary file format, which is rather complicated. And trying to read that file without Eclipse APIs is very hard. So here's a little example that just gets all the projects from the workspace. So getting the workspace and just print them all out. So if I run this in here, it's not going to do anything terribly exciting because, well, we're in Eclipse already. It doesn't seem that hard. But this wants to show the command line running. So over here in my command shell, I ran it before, but you see I'm running Eclipse, giving my workspace, and then there's a special application, org Eclipse EASE run script. I give it the name of that script I just ran. I run it, and a moment later, it's gone through and extracted all my project names in a fairly simple way. All right. So finally, this is I've mentioned this to a few people. I don't know if any of those people I mentioned to are actually in this room now, but some people have seen launch groups. It's one of the CDT features. There's been some plans of moving that to platform debug, but it allows you to do one other launch and then wait a few seconds, do another launch, et cetera. Maybe launch 2 or 3 things at once. And a typical example of that might be you want to launch something that cleans up some unknown state, runs your server, runs your client. So of course, you can do that with Python as well as you want. There's a module called launch. And if we look over here, the launch module has accessing all the configurations and doing launches and getting the launch manager. So you get full control over that part. So this is just a simple launch. It's just going to, if I run this as an EASE script, it's going to start a debug session on my client, which is that 3 lines of code just to demonstrate here. So it's a client connecting to a server, pretending to. Now I wouldn't recommend you do it for that. We already have launch configurations. But if we take it to the next stage, we can replicate the behavior of launch groups. So here, we're launching the prepare script. We're waiting for it to terminate. Then we can launch our server, give that the time it needs to start up, and then launch our client application in debug mode. So if we run that up, all right, preparing, takes a second, stirs server starting all automatically, wait 3 seconds, change over to debug, and we're debugging our client. Now, if we look over here, say, that's all great and all. I'm going to stop debugging my client. My server's still running. And actually, in this case, I want to restart, try and get a clean state. So now I have to stop my server. And of course, the complexity of this can grow. So this is where you get the power of the scripting. Sorry. So in my third state here, where I'm launching my server, I'm saving that launch. And then I wait for the client to be terminated. And when the client is terminated, I terminate the server automatically. So now when I run this, I'm preparing my launch, it's cleaning up my old state, server starting up. A couple seconds later, we'll kick into debug. We're stopping debug. We do all of our debugging, and we go. See over here, the server's still serving. OK, we're done debugging. Terminate the client, and the server is now terminated for us, and we're done. So that's it I have for demos. Do you have it? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pass it over back to Tracy for her to do the rest of the slides.
Okay, so just what you're seeing today, it's available in GitHub. We're going to merge it into the main EASE repository. We only got the IP clear about a month ago. Oh, not even a month ago, so quite recently. So you can access it directly from GitHub, but it will be available as properly as the main EASE install. Just kind of looking at what kind of things we would sort of see the direction. The short-term things, that's all been done. So we've got the Py4j interpreter in, we've done the critical bug fixes and all the release engineering. Then a few things we're looking at going ahead. If I talk about, we're looking at having more Pythonic behavior, so that's a bit of a usability issue. And if people are familiar with Python, it's just making things, the API much more friendly, so it looks like something that's very familiar to a Python developer, and just being able to run scripts with Python directly as well, and dealing with some of the things like just some of the namespace pollution and keeping the namespaces clean. There's the lovely tools that are PyDev, and we want to make sure that going forward that there's some good integration, because PyDev has some really amazing features, and it supports, at the moment we don't have any autocompletion, but PyDev does a lot of autocompletion, so it's got console and editor, so we have to work out, well, how could those be integrated so we're not rewriting that for ease. And also IPython, so IPython has lots of features for the console, and we want to be able to take advantage of those as well, so people using this get the features that they're familiar with IPython. And yeah, just some aspects of how you configure the interpreter as well. Okay, so there's a technology as well known as Analysis RPC, which was developed at Diamond Light Source. And it's a solution that deals with efficiently moving data around. So what Diamond did is they had Python and Java integrated, but they would use it to move around big arrays of data for between Python and their plotting system. So you could plot large amounts of data, and this was focused on optimizing that and making it easy to use. So it understood data arrays, and it understood things like regions of interest. Anything else worth saying about that? I think this was the general kind of architecture of, on the Python side, you'd have numpy and D arrays, and that would get flattened, sent across transport, which is a mixture of XML, RPC, and disk and memory, and then received on the data side in what we call unflattening. Yeah? Yeah, no.
So I think the key things, there's, at the beginning we talked about the different technologies that can work together to connect Python and Java, and different technologies have different advantages. The Py4j that we're building on allows anything to be moved between Python and Java in quite a nice way. But it doesn't particularly let large things to move it efficiently. Whereas at Diamond, we developed this Analysis RPC that allowed very large things, by very large we're meaning hundreds of megabytes, up to about a gigabyte, quite efficiently to be moved between Python and Java. And now we're trying to get the best of both worlds and integrate that and deliver that in one cohesive package.
And then it's two-way, so this is just the other side of it, Java to Python. On the CDT side, we're doing quite a lot on the tooling, and we're looking at having Visual Studio macro-like support, and maybe getting some more modules in there, like debug or the C editor, or having some integration with GDB, which already supports Python. But yeah, in summary, Python scripting with ease helps you be more productive, extend Eclipse quickly, leverage Python and integrate Python libraries, and collaborate by sharing script with others easily. And thank you. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
So, you've talked about this in the context of scripting your Eclipse development IDE, but presumably EASE and J are installable units that can go to any Eclipse RCP application.
Okay, so you're asking about RCP applications and whether you can use this.
In my IDE development environment, which I as a programmer can use, presumably I can install EASE into my general RCP application.
Yes? Is there any?
Yes, I just see a question.
Oh, okay. Do you want to answer?
Right. So,
I think this.
right. Yeah, so, oh, sorry. Yes, so, yeah.
How much of the Eclipse stuff is in there?
Yes, so the plugins can be installed in any RCP application. So yeah, there's no limit on that. On that. Sorry, you had a.
Yeah, I was just telling you. For instance, project, it's a open source project, and we already use EASE.
Okay.
RCP application.
Oh, excellent. I'm glad to hear someone's using EASE. Can you repeat the name of the project?
App for MC.
App for MC, related to Amalthea.
Platform project for me.
Okay, app for MC. Great. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming. Oh no, sorry.
When you were editing and changing the headers, it's because you are making that into a contribution which is loaded on the fly into the registry to resolve.
Yeah, it's loaded on the fly into the registry. Yeah, but it's not changing. It's a layer away from the plugin XML that it's changing it, because the plugin XML that's static. So.
Build something equivalent to the plugin XML memory and pass it to the registry as a stream.
Yeah, that's right. So.
And to continue the question, once I've done my scripts, could I know it's not really the purpose, but potentially, could I make them into a plugin with small dependencies without all the UI feature, maybe just a runtime to add custom functionality without having to code on top of the Eclipse programming model, but through Python, for example?
Yeah. Yes. So you can take a script. If you have a script, you can wrap it up into a plugin, and you can reference that plugin from within Eclipse. So you know where Tracy was showing that you said this is the location to find scripts. You can actually reference individual plugins, and there's a P2 rule so that when that plugin's installed, it can set up that preference. So it's if you edit the P2inf, if you have any experience editing P2inf, you can set up those scripts like that. So, all right. Thank you.